Welcome to BaseballGuys.com. I'm your host and Around the Horn, Ray Flowers. Three injured players are who I'm going to start talking about today. The first is the outfielder of the Phillies, Dominic Brown. Now, he had a really slow spring. He then injured his hand. He's on the disabled list. He started to take some light swings. He's going to hopefully progress to the level of playing in game action at AAA by the end of April. Going to take some time. He really was struggling with his mechanics prior to the injury. Hopefully, at some point, he will be back with the Phillies in the month of May. Of course, it remains to be seen how much playing time he'll get at that point, but he is going in the right direction in his rehab. Two pitchers. First off, Jake Peavy. Now, Jake Peavy had a shoulder issue. He looked really good at times in spring, had a bit of a setback, and then the White Sox said, look, we pushed this guy too far too fast. They decided to really back off him. They're taking a very measured approach at this point. If everything proceeds well, he'll continue to do his work, continue to make minor league appearances in the month of April, and they're targeting that first week of May for him to return to the White Sox starting rotation. Very important for them to be careful with Peavy. He's got a history of some nicks and bruises here and there. If they can get him back at anywhere near full strength, that starting pitching rotation for the White Sox could potentially be very dynamic. Over with the Brewers, Zach Greinke, he's out of action. He hurt his oblique muscle on the side, playing a pickup basketball game. He is also being handled with a little bit of kid gloves because the Brewers understand that they need this guy long term if they want to make the playoffs this year. Greinke is slowly working his way back. He's throwing a bit. The next 10 days or so, he'll continue to do that on the side before he progresses to some minor league outings. At this point, you have to think he's probably going to miss the month of April, but it is looking good for him, just like with Peavy, to hopefully return for the Brewers in the first week of May. What are the Red Sox doing? Well, they're panicking a bit. They've had a horrible start to the season, a historically bad start, in fact, for the club, and one of the main reasons for that has been a lack of hitting. You look at the order. David Ortiz is hitting 227. Dustin Pedroia is hitting 227. You've got Crawford and Ellsbury under 180. And Kevin Youkilis, folks, is hitting 105. Obviously, all of that's going to turn around. There's way too much talent there for this to go on much longer. But a little bit of oddity occurring in Boston. I don't know if it's panic time or if it's the time to do it because of all the struggles. But the Red Sox continue to jimmy jack around with that batting order. Now, Carl Crawford, in the 7th game of the season today, has now been moved up to the leadoff spot. It's the 4th spot in the batting order he's been asked to fill in 7 games, which is a little bit ridiculous if you ask me. Jacoby Ellsbury drops from 1st to 8th. Now, studies have shown that when you drop down in a spot in the batting order, you lose 15 to 20 plate appearances over the course of the season. A move from 1 to 8 for Ellsbury, if it's permanent, could have a drastic effect on his fantasy value. He could lose upwards of 100 plate appearances if that sticks. Keep a close eye on that. With the case of Crawford, it's just, I think, the team trying to find the spot where he's happy. He's going to hit at the top of the order. He might drop down a bit against some lefties, but Carl Crawford, don't lose faith in him. He's still going to be a dynamic weapon. It's just been a slow start. Red Sox, pick a lineup and stick with it. It'll benefit your players. What about the situation with Starlin Castro? Now, I've been on record as saying I don't think Starlin Castro is going to live up to the hype this year. Tremendous spring. I think it caused him to fly too far up draft boards. This is a player who has good speed but hasn't been able to transition it to success in the stolen base department. He's growing. He's only 21 years old. I expect his power to increase as he ages, but he's not at a level where he can really drive the ball despite all the success he had in spring training. So I would expect him to contribute in the batting average. We saw him hit 300 last year, steal a few bases, hit a few homers, but I hope you didn't draft him expecting a breakout season. I don't know if it's going to happen quite that way, at least in terms of fantasy value, but there's a very interesting fact. He is so locked in right now. He's continued on what he did in spring into the regular season here in the games. It wasn't until his 22nd at-bat of the year that he swung and missed to the pitch. Pretty amazing when you think about it. Starlin Castro, luminous future, very good this year, but I don't think we've seen anywhere near what we're going to see from him in a couple of seasons when his body matures. Derek Lowe. Why do I bring up Derek Lowe? I want to talk about sample size for a moment. Linty Fresh 65 on Twitter sent me a note about sample size. How many outings do we need to see from a pitcher before we think maybe this is a new level for him? I said 8 to 10, and then you start looking at it, and he sent me back some notes on Lowe that said, look, over Lowe's the last 11 starts, 7 at the end of last season, 2 in the playoffs, 2 at the start of this year. We're seeing a whole new Derek Lowe. I mean, more than a strikeout an inning, a 3.6 strikeout to walk ratio. His whip is 108, his ERA is 1.37, and Linty Fresh 85 says, well, look, is this a new level of performance for Derek Lowe? To which I respond, I don't think it is. We have a very small sample size. We are talking about 11 starts. It does grab my attention. Like I said, 8 to 10, I start to look at it. However, with Derek Lowe, he's not a youngster. He's not a guy who's fought through injuries and is finally making his presence known. This is a big league pitcher who's had over 600 appearances in the majors, He's had over 300 career starts. We know exactly what we're getting with Derek Lowe. Players, simply put, don't take this massive level of jump in production after they've been in the big leagues for more than a decade. It never happens. You got to remember, in his career, Derek Lowe's strikeout rate per 9 innings is 3 batters below where it is right now. His strikeout to walk ratio in his career compared to where it is in these last 11 starts is about a 1.5 below where it is right now. The last 6 years, he's only had 1 season with a whip under 1.25, and his career ERA is 3.8. It's simply an unsustainable pace right now for Derek Lowe. In terms of his fantasy value, he's solid. You know what you're getting. It's good performance from him. The strikeouts are not going to be there. Wins being variable. When those ratios come back in line to what we expect with Derek Lowe, might be time to sell high on him if someone's really in love with him right now. And then finally, talking about a player that people are in love with, I got all kinds of questions about this guy, and I don't get it. It's Willie flippin' Bloomquist. I added a nickname for him that I think is very applicable. 10th season in the big leagues. Willie Bloomquist has had 1 season in his career of 275 at-bats. 1. There's a reason for that, and it's not because all his managers have been stupid. He's just not that good of a player, folks. Career line, 265 average, 319 on-base percentage, 339 slugging percentage. The on-base and slugging percentage are abysmal. Just terrible. That's why he doesn't have value in the fantasy game. Now, he's only been playing because Stephen Drew is out. Reports indicate that Drew will return to the starting lineup for the Diamondbacks on Friday. Bloomquist will continue to have value in NL-only leagues because he moves around the field and he can do you a few things, including stealing bases. But in terms of a mixed league value, it ain't happening. Even if he gets 400 at-bats this year, the only thing he's going to give you is steals. He's only had 1 season of over 20 steals in his career. Remember that, even though he started off so hot right now. And factor this into your equation when you talk about Willie Bloomquist. Again, a player with a decade of big league experience. Per 162 games in his career, 265 average, 3 home runs, 32 RBIs, 60 runs scored, 23 steals. It has been a fantastic start to the season for Willie Bloomquist. But in 4 or 5 months, I bet you're going to forget completely about it. Ray Flowers, BaseballGuys.com. Thanks for joining me on Around the Horn, and I'll talk to you again soon.